Hey everybody, and thanks for joining me for this ITG session of Listen and Learn. We're going to call this session today How to Survive in a COVID-19 Environment, although we're not going to get into how to wear a mask or how to wash your hands properly, although I hope you're doing both of those things and a lot. We're also not going to get into any trumpet-specific topics today. We're not going to talk about how to practice Petrushka or work on your lip flexibilities, although I'm sure if you want to hear about that, there's probably a great video on here for you to check out somewhere as well. So why this topic? Why did I choose this to talk about today? Obviously, this global pandemic has created a huge challenge for musicians. Our concert halls are closed. They're going to be closed for a long time. Private lessons, group lessons, band rehearsals, all that stuff has now been shut down and moved to an online space. And I don't see how that's going to change, at least for the foreseeable future. It's obviously a really difficult time for musicians. But what I want to talk to you about today was actually here way before this pandemic. Now, it might be more relevant now because of the pandemic. I think the pandemic turned up the volume on these issues that I want to talk to you about today. But they definitely have existed for a long time. And those questions are, who is in control of your career? Who is in control of your finances as a musician? Who's deciding what work you do, when you do it, and with whom? Think about those for a minute. Because if the answer isn't you, then there's some things you might want to hear and some things you might want to consider. If you only hear one thing that I say in this whole session, I want it to be this right here. Musicians who keep doing the same things in the same way they've always done them are not going to survive this current environment. Musicians who open their minds, have the ability to pivot and reinvent themselves, will not only survive, but will become the thought leaders in their areas of expertise. Let me actually say that one more time, just because I want that to hit home. Musicians who are going to keep doing the same things they've always done are not going to survive. And those who are willing to pivot and reinvent will not only survive, but thrive. And I have to be honest with you, especially watching orchestras and how they've behaved. Orchestras have done a pretty bad job over the past 100 years of evolving with the culture and the way we consume content and the way we look at art. And I think orchestras are in the same boat. The ones who can pivot and reinvent will survive this, and the ones that don't probably won't be here in a couple of years or even less. So here's a few questions for you to consider when you're thinking about who's in control of your finances and the work that you do as a musician. Do you have the freedom to take a day off? Can you take a vacation? Do you feel confident that you'll be able to retire someday? Is somebody else calling the shots? And does artistic expression depend on the circumstances beyond your control, like a pandemic? That's kind of where I want this conversation to start. And I want you to consider the following also, especially since I'm talking to a room full of trumpet players. It's not enough to be really good at playing your instrument anymore. In fact, it's not enough just to be a really good employee of an orchestra. It's not enough to be just a really good teacher at a college. You need to be able to communicate why what you do has value and why anybody should pay attention to it. That's always been true for artists, but it's more true today than ever. You need to be able to demystify what you do to reach new audiences. This is one of my biggest challenges and my biggest missions at the LA Phil is to get people to realize they can come into the concert hall even if they don't know anything about what they're about to experience. That you don't need a PhD in musicology to listen to a Mozart symphony. It definitely helps to have knowledge, of course, but you don't need to walk in all studied up to engage with art. That's not how it works. You also need to be an advocate for your creativity. We'll talk about that in a minute and what that actually means. By the way, if we're just meeting for the first time, my name is Christopher Still. I'm the second trumpet player with the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and I'm also the founder of honestypill.com, which is an online coaching course for musicians and online coaching and training. My goal is to help the people I work with go further, faster, and be more efficient, get more done in the practice room with less time. So by the way, if you haven't visited my website, honestypill.com, I encourage you to do so. Subscribe for my mailing list. Got a lot of great stuff going on. So let's get into the content of this session. There is an incredible connection between having a mission or having a purpose in what you do and being committed to creating the means to execute that mission. So what does that mean, what I just said? That means being able to fully support yourself, first of all. That means being able to create opportunities in your own life, for your family, and for your career. And it also means being able to serve the people that you want to work with and that you want to help. Think about that for a second. This is a business. Yeah, we are artists, but we also need to have income so we can support our art and keep our careers moving so we're not in a constant state of struggle. So what do you need to make that actually happen? Well, you need financial sustainability, you need financial empowerment, and you need financial freedom. So you're probably, asking yourself, great, that sounds awesome. You're in the LA Phil, I'm a freelancer, or I'm in a small regional orchestra. How do you actually do that? What's more is you might actually be thinking, I thought I needed to be a starving artist in order to be taken seriously as a creator or a creative person, right? Well, that's what you've been told since the day you announced you were going to music school, probably, right? You're probably told, oh, that's crazy. There's no way to make a living doing that. Being a music teacher is a horrible job. You're going to be overworked and underpaid for your whole life. Well, fun fact, there's nothing noble about starving for your art. In fact, it's a lot easier to create when there's money in the bank and food in the pantry. And the only way to do that is by creating a solid plan that aligns with your skills and identifying also who will benefit from those skills and then connecting them with that. That can give you the freedom to pursue anything that you want in your life. So I know this sounds very pie in the sky, but I'm going to actually give you some tools you can use to identify what those things are and apply this actual theory to your actual life. So there's a lot of really negative stuff happening right now. A lot of negative things happening in our industry. I mean, I'm a walking billboard for that, right? The LA Phil, 52-week orchestra, one of the most solid, safe arts organizations in the world, and we're currently having a really hard time figuring out how to negotiate this pandemic. The negative stuff, though, is also intersecting with a lot of positive trends, and a lot of boundaries that existed even a few months ago are gone. Like the idea of taking an online lesson, for example. That seemed pretty far from the mainstream even just a year ago, and now it's the only stream. So think about, is that something that you might want to get involved in, working and connecting with an audience in an online space? Maybe you're wondering or worried that there's too much competition. Oh, how could I possibly compete? Everybody has a website. Everybody's scrambling to move their studios online, right? But I want to tell you this right now. When the water finally recedes from this pandemic, most people who have thrown up a teaching website or put together an online studio, most of them are going to go back to the old patterns because it's easier, it's what they know, it's less scary. But there are going to be a lot of people, students, other musicians, clients, who have had a really great interaction during this time and realized that was pretty awesome. I had a connection with somebody that I never would have even met before had it not been for this pandemic. I want to go back and do more of that work. And the teachers and artists and organizations that have pivoted during this time will be there to serve them and serve them in a big way. That's kind of what I want you to start thinking about when you think about your survival of your career right now. Look, I'm not sitting here pretending that anything that I'm saying is easy. I know that there's a lot of mindset work that has to be done. I know this is scary. I know you're probably thinking, yeah, but I have like a car payment and student loans and rent to pay and groceries to pay for. And I know all that's true. But what I'm trying to get more musicians to realize is that you are actually in control of how these outcomes actually occur. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. There's something else I want to point out that I'm just amazed at how often this gets brushed under the rug or just is invisible to most musicians. And that is musicians who understand what it means to put in 10,000 hours of work in a practice room are uniquely well positioned to thrive in an environment like we have right now. And not just as someone who's an employee of an orchestra or a school, but as someone who knows they're capable of doing much more than just playing their instrument. So here's some common objections that I hear when I mention that statement. And did you get what I said? 10,000 hours in the practice room means you have a lot more skills than just playing your instrument. Think about that for a second. So here's a common objection. Is there actual value for students and clients who are used to working with you in person to now think about doing that online? Is there a value? Is it worth it? I know that I have teachers in my circle who have thrown up their hands at the beginning of this situation and said, all I know is how to teach one-on-one, or all I know is how to perform. I can't do this, and I'm not going to do this. And unfortunately, many of those teachers and performers have lost their studios. Their students left to find other teachers who were willing to create and pivot. And I think that's sad, because I think that they did have the skills, but there's a lot of fear that comes around making a big change, right? Anytime we try and do something new, it's scary. That's human nature. Let's talk about some of the silver linings, though. Well, for one, I mean, I'm talking to you right now, right? One of the best experiences I can recall in my LA Phil career was when the LA Phil trumpet section went down and did a live session at the ITG a few years ago about working together as a section and what it means for a section to function. And we did that live, face to face. It was incredible. Why can't we do that again? I mean, we're almost kind of doing that now, although the rest of my section's not here. They're all at home in their respective studios. But we could create resources like that now that not only could reach the ITG family, but expand way beyond that. And in fact, even reach people who don't have access to teachers who are talented like you, or performers like you, or other members of orchestras like the LA Phil, for example. And on that topic, let's talk a little bit about access. And this is a topic about this survival in the COVID era that is really dear to me, and I really want you to think about this too, is how it's now even more possible in some ways to serve underserved communities, people who may not be able to travel or connect with high caliber teachers or musicians like you listening right now. Now, there is a really dark part of what I just said, which is the digital divide, and how not everyone even has access to the devices to make these connections happen, or even having an internet connection, or even having a quiet environment with which to connect with someone else online. And I think that if we had one challenge or one major responsibility as artists, it's to think about those people who are being left behind right now in this digital movement, especially in the music industry, and how we might be able to reach out to them. It's a big challenge and a big puzzle, but we're creative, right? That's what we do. And I think we can find that out. So I'm challenging you to see if you can think of a way to do that right now as well. Other ways that this pandemic has created more access is, now I have clients all over the country that I work with, and we meet every week right here in my studio, virtually, of course. And that's not bound just by a geography. That I have clients in Europe. You can have people all over the world that you're connecting with now. And now it's become not only normal, but it's become the only way to do that. Many of you are taking auditions or helping your students prepare for auditions. And I want to say that there's a great opportunity here for one of the most impactful ways to fast track your development, and that's by using mock auditions. If you're preparing for an audition, or you're helping someone else prepare, and you aren't utilizing mock auditions, you're missing out big time. So how does that translate to online? How is that something we can reinvent right now? How can we run a mock audition efficiently over the internet? Well, I want to just let you know that in a program that I ran this past year, the Audition Accelerator, we actually had live auditions planned. Everyone in the group had a real audition that they were applied to and preparing for, and then COVID happened during the course, and it canceled all those auditions. So what do? Do we throw up our hands and say, well, I guess we're not going to be able to do that part of the experience? Or do we reinvent? Do we pivot? And that's exactly what we did. And I'm here to tell you that we discovered something really cool about doing online mock auditions. And that was, a candidate would sometimes they would do it live, and sometimes they would pre-record their mock using honesty, of course. So it was like a real mock audition, press record, play the list down, press stop, and then upload it to a Facebook group. Then we were able to bring in candidates and committee members into that group from all over the place and watch that video together in real time as the candidate was actually playing the excerpts. The comments were populating in the chat. Isn't that amazing? That's actually not even possible in a real audition. When you're playing, you have no idea what the committee is writing on those yellow sheets of paper. And you also usually have no idea why you got kicked out, right? This is an opportunity for you or your students to actually see what's happening in real time during an audition, which I think is a valuable tool. We never would have figured that out, though, if we didn't have the right mindset of pivoting and realizing we're capable of doing more than what we're used to. It's like being in 3 different places at one time. Is this perfect? No. There's nothing better than being in the room and establishing community, right? That's why we're musicians in the first place, isn't it? Because we like community. We like connecting with other people. But this is a great illustration of what's possible. You know what? On the other hand, if you're listening to this and if taking your 10,000 hours of skills and turning that into a farther reach or a more impactful teaching studio or online business doesn't sound interesting to you, that's totally cool. You can always wait for the concert halls to reopen, but I don't know when that's going to be. So I think this is a really great opportunity. So let's talk about those bills I mentioned earlier. There are 2 things that musicians historically have really bad relationships with. And I'm not talking about trumpet players. That's another topic entirely. The 2 things that musicians have bad relationships with are time and money. Time and money, right? And I said it earlier. We are overworked and underpaid. That's a typical musician's battle cry, right? Well, I want to just suggest to you, again, in the spirit of survival, in the spirit of thriving during something like a pandemic or beyond, what's your relationship with those 2 things? Do you feel like you're always hurrying and rushing to the next thing? How do you feel about your relationship with money? In fact, let's do a quick exercise, okay? I'm going to give you a piece of homework here. I want you to get a piece of paper out, either now or later, and I want you to write a quick letter to money. Write a letter to money and tell money what you think about it. Describe your relationship. You could write something down like, Dear Money, you're so unpredictable. Or, Dear Money, you always disappear when I need you the most. Or, I don't understand you. Or, I want you around, but I think you're dirty. So write those things down and see what you've actually identified as the way you think about money, because it's my belief that our thoughts create our beliefs, right? When you think about something, what is a belief, right? A belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again. Your beliefs impact your actions, right? You have a code, moral ethics, your belief system, that impacts your actions. And your actions create your reality. So if your thoughts create your beliefs inform your actions, and your actions create your reality, then your thoughts create your reality, right? And if your thoughts are, Dear Money, you always disappear when I need you the most, that thought is going to create your reality. So a lot of the work that I do when I coach audition strategy, for example, is not about trumpet playing. It's about the mindset work that has to happen behind the instrument. And that's applicable to any instrument, not just a trumpet player. So here's the takeaway for this part of the conversation. Your relationship to money, your mindset around money, the things you think, the thoughts you think around money have a much bigger impact on your reality than you realize. And if you're a person who is sitting at home right now thinking, this is unfair, how can I make a living when my orchestra has folded or my school is shut down? There is a way out of it. There is a way to be creative. There is a way to shift your mindset around this and not only survive, but thrive. Anybody who's listening to this and wants to talk to me about this more, happy to hop on a call, by the way, because I've had quite a transformation this year in my own coaching business just because of this mindset shift. Happy to share that with you in another call or another video. So it all comes down to this. If you want to be in control of your finances, if you want to be in control of your career, you don't need to spend another 6 hours in the practice room working on your high notes. You need to spend some time in the practice room working on your mindset. Okay, I'll leave that there. By the way, it's really easy to see people in our world who are already doing this great mindset work and think, well, I could never compete with them. I could never do what they're doing. That guy's got it so together. That girl's been doing this way longer than me. You know what? It's not about comparison with other people. In fact, when you see somebody else surviving in a difficult situation, that's actually proof to you that it's possible. And then if they can do it, you can absolutely do it too. They've probably suffered through the same challenges you have, but they just figured them out. But that means those challenges are solvable. But again, you need the right mindset in order for that to happen. All right. Part of what I deal with is helping musicians discover their superpower or the thing that they're really good at. You know, like if I were talking to somebody at a party and they said, who do you know who's really good at XYZ? I would say, oh, you got to go talk to Chris. He's the guy to talk to about that. What's your superpower? Do you think that that's something you could identify? And if you can, that could be something you could turn into a real possibility, even during a pandemic like this. When I ask people to think about this, by the way, taking those first steps to creating something new, here are some of the sort of objections that I hear. In fact, I sent an email out to my list recently called One Simple Question. And I asked, what was the biggest challenge or block preventing you from succeeding right now? And here are some of the things that they said. Live performing is all I know. I don't have time to watch endless tech tutorials on YouTube to learn how to use a microphone. I don't know the first thing about starting an online studio. My students, or the parents of my students, don't think online learning is a real value. There's so many hidden costs to starting an online business or studio. Well, this is a good one. I'm petrified of getting in front of the camera. By the way, that gets easier the more you do it, just like performing your trumpet. Here's a couple more. All music careers are volatile. It's hard to stay motivated. I'm worried that I need to be perfect if I do something online. Wow, that's a big one, right? Perfectionism, especially with orchestral classical musicians. Last two. I'm the world's worst writer. I'm the world's worst salesperson. Because, by the way, if you're a musician, you're an artist, you are in sales. Not like slimy used car salesman type stuff, but you are in sales. That's part of being an advocate for your art. I mentioned that earlier. So all the things I just mentioned that were responses from that email I sent are symptoms of the dreaded imposter syndrome. And this happens anytime we try something new. And as we wrap up this session today, I want to leave you with the following thought, which is, think about the last time you tried something new, or think about something that you're really thinking about doing in the future. What comes up for you? What imposter syndrome symptoms do you hear yourself saying? Write those down, identify them, and notice that they're there, because those are the things that become your thoughts, beliefs, actions, and reality if you don't get them under control and just notice them. All right, I'm going to give you one last piece of homework here as we wrap up. And I want you to get a piece of paper and I want you to write down at least 3 of your strengths. And that could be strengths as a musician, as a colleague, as a teacher, as a performer, or as a person. And these things should have nothing to do with your trumpet playing skills, okay? Challenge yourself to broaden the definition of who you are and what you can offer. So let's recap really quickly what we talked about in this session. Yes, these are challenging times for musicians. If you're open to possibilities and willing to do the work, you can take control of your career even during a pandemic, and certainly in the times before the pandemic, this was still an issue. You can also be in control of your finances even now while the normal work you had seems to be disappearing. And the biggest takeaway from today, after 10,000 hours in the practice room, you are absolutely qualified to do anything that you want to do in your life. You are capable of doing more than playing your instrument. Thanks for watching this session, everybody. I invite you to drop by my website, honestypill.com, and scroll down to the bottom of the first page and sign up for my newsletter. I've got a lot of great free trainings and offers and programs coming up. Also invite you to hop on over to my Facebook group and join the discussion there. There's some fabulous things going on. It's a really safe space. And, introduce yourself and ask a question. Thanks again to ITG for asking me to be here. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to being on stage with you all again. I look forward to coming to the ITG conferences and seeing you in person. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments. And until then, happy practicing, and I'll see you real soon. Take care.